Hello, 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 everyone. Hope you guys are enjoying your evening or your morning, wherever you guys are. Uh, the fall season is finally here, and it's wonderful to finally feel some cold air because the summer was just atrocious. Anyway, I was thinking about something today. I was thinking about divisions within the Catholic Church, divisions even within ethnic lines. It's very strange because the Catholic Church, the title of the institution itself is Catholic, which literally means universal. Yet, not everything in the Catholic Church is universal. And they will even encourage people to stay within the church that they were confirmed in. So if you were born Greek Catholic and you were confirmed in the Greek Catholic Church, and you want to, let's say, one day go to the Latin Rite, or like a traditional Latin Rite mass, the Catholic Church will actually encourage you just to stay in the Greek Catholic Church. If you were confirmed in the Maronite Church, which is the Lebanese Catholic Church, and you were confirmed in the Maronite Church, but then you decided to leave the Maronite Church and go to a traditional Latin Rite Church, the Roman Catholic Church will tell you, no. Well, we encourage you to stay in the Lebanese Catholic Church. You can go to a traditional Latin Mass. No one can stop you, but they will actually discourage you from going to a different rite. And I myself have seen this sort of thing firsthand. When I first became Catholic, I was confirmed in the year 2013 in the Lebanese Catholic Church, in the Maronite Catholic Church. I say Lebanese because not everybody knows what the Maronite Church is, so I just say it's the Lebanese Catholic Church, basically. And I began to notice the weird ethnocentric rhetoric in the Lebanese Catholic Church, which was strange to me. I went to a youth meeting in the Maronite Church, and they kept talking about our Lebanese identity, our Lebanese heritage, and I'm like, wait, I'm not Lebanese. Like, this doesn't apply to me, and it wouldn't apply to anybody who's not Lebanese who decides to go to the Lebanese Catholic Church. Why is there so much focus on your ethnicity? Aren't we Catholic? Isn't the word Catholic supposed to mean universal? Like, why aren't we being universal here? And there was a lot of talk like that. And you can argue and say, well, Ted, the Lebanese Catholics, they want to maintain their own identity, whatever. But I remember going to the little dinner meeting that they had for the youth the youth group. And I sat down at my table. There was no one at the table that I sat at. But then all of a sudden, the bishop decides to sit at my table, and there were like 3 or 4 priests who decided to sit at my table. And they started talking to me, and one of them asked me, I don't remember which one it was, but one of the priests asked me, where are you from? And I said, I'm from California. And he said, no, like, where are you really from? And it was just strange to me. It was just strange to me. And then I found out that, well, the Maronite Catholics have a very long history of fighting and killing Palestinians, and there was a huge civil war in Lebanon in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And in 1982, Lebanese Maronite nationalists decided to go into some Palestinian refugee camps, and they spent about 3 days butchering and raping Palestinians, hunting down Palestinians as if they were animals that needed to be put down. It was pretty horrific. And what was crazy is I started looking more into that massacre. I've talked about this massacre in several of my videos. I've written about it at several times. I even wrote a little short story based on what happened in Sabra and Shatila. And what was so disturbing to me was, while the patriarch of the Maronite Church uh, condemned violence in the Civil War. There were many members of the Maronite clergy. They were also Maronite monks who supported the ideology of the Maronite Phalangist, which was an ideology that was heavily ethnocentric, that was even inspired by the Nazis, and was viciously nationalistic. And the patriarch of the Maronite Church at the time rejected this sort of ideology and refused to support it. So God bless the patriarch of the Maronite Church, but the clergy people who supported it were evil. And I decided to leave the Maronite Church. I decided to leave the Lebanese Catholic Church. I didn't really like the ethnocentric ideology that was quite present in the theological air, so to speak. So I eventually just went to traditional Catholic Latin Rite Mass, and spent several years attending a traditional Latin Rite Mass. And within that time, I eventually met up with a priest. His name was Father Robert L. Kinsel. Robert L. Kinsel. Kinsel being Kincl, if you want to spell it. If you want to go Google his name, you'll read my material that I wrote about him, exposing him. And I found out that this priest was literally teaching people that homosexuals can do the actions of Sodom, you know what I'm talking about, and they don't have to go to confession. They're fine as long as they remain in monogamous relationships. So I decided to report him, as a Catholic should have done, to the hierarchy in the Diocese of Austin, Texas. And eventually, they asked me for evidence. I gave them a plethora of evidence proving that this guy was teaching some very deviant and evil things. And they asked me for a meeting. So I had a meeting with two officials from the Diocese of Austin, Danny Garcia and Deacon Ron Walker. Pretty certain those were their names. And in this meeting, Deacon Ron Walker asked me, he asked me about my confirmation to the Catholic Church. And I said I was confirmed in the Maronite Catholic Church. And he said, Maronite? And I said, yes. And he said, you were confirmed in the Maronite Church, yet you're going to a Latin Rite Church. And I said, yeah, is there a problem? He said, well, the church encourages people to stay in the rite that they were confirmed in. It's like, what? I remember hearing, before I got confirmed, I remember hearing that what makes the Catholic Church so great is its universality. And that a man living in Spain could go to Mexico and find a Catholic church, and he will be partaking in the same exact Mass that he would have been participating back in his home country. The universality of the Catholic Church is what is praised and is what is glorified. And not glorified isn't the right word, but praised, and it's something that the Catholics take really great pride in. They say that the Protestant churches are disjointed and they're fragmented and they're divided, and that's true. They are. There's like tens of thousands of different sects out there for Protestantism. But if we're going to call ourselves Catholics, and if we're going to talk about the universal nature of the Catholic Church, then I don't know why we would ever discourage somebody from attending another Catholic church just because it's not the rite that the person was confirmed in. My cat was making noise, sorry. So, a number of weeks ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's also Catholic, and she told me that she has been looking for a different type of Catholic church to attend to because she's so tired of the liberalism that is rampant in the Novus Ordo churches. So she told me that she was roaming the internet looking for a church, and she found out about a Ukrainian Catholic church in the area. And she wasn't familiar at all with the Ukrainian Catholic Church, other than that it's Catholic and it's under Rome, so it's legitimate. So she called up the church, and she said that some guy with a very thick accent picked up the phone and that you could hear some very loud music in the background. I'm assuming it's some kind of Eastern European music. I don't know. But she said that this guy said to her, hello, hello, yes, yes, hello, how can I help you? And she said, yeah, are you Father so-and-so? And he said, yes, I am. And she said, well, I want to attend your church. And this Ukrainian priest said, are you Ukrainian? Are you Ukrainian? And she said, no, I'm not Ukrainian. I mean, we're talking about, the typical Italian background, Italian-American East Coast person here. She's like, no, I'm not. I'm Catholic, but I'm not Ukrainian. And this guy said, oh, no, we want people from Ukraine here. We want Ukrainians here. And clicked. That was it. That was the end of the conversation. The phone call ended. The call was cut off. I don't know if it was bad signal or if the guy hung up the phone. I wouldn't be surprised if the guy hung up the phone because he was just. And she told me that he sounded upset, like the tone of his voice was expressing frustration with her. And it's not really surprising. And so when she told me that story, I recounted to her what I heard from Deacon Ron Walker, that the church really encourages people to stay where they're at. So if you were born in the Lebanese Catholic Church, if you were confirmed in the Lebanese Catholic Church, just stay with those desert Christians over there and leave us Western Christians alone, okay? And if you were not born Ukrainian, then the Ukrainian Catholic Church don't really want you, because at the end of the day, a lot of these churches are just ethnic clubs. Now, of course, the Latin Rite Catholic churches are not ethnic clubs. They don't care if you're white, black, Hispanic, because there are all sorts of people in the Western Rite churches, in the Latin Rite churches, be they traditional Latin Rite or Novus Ordo, it doesn't matter. But when it comes to the Lebanese, Greek, Ukrainian churches, these churches basically become little ethnic clubs where you can go to church and then afterwards you can watch your ethnic people play in a soccer match against another ethnic people that are your enemy. Croatia is about to go against Serbia in football game. Dobra, that sort of thing. So I was thinking about this today, and as I was thinking about it, I began to remember things that I read in a particular book about the genocide of the Polish people during the Second World War. It's this book right here, Poland's Holocaust by Tadeusz Petrovsky. It is an excellent, excellent read, one of the best books I've ever read. Highly recommended for those who are interested in the subject of Ukrainian nationalism, the German occupation of Poland, the Soviet occupation of Poland, because this book gets into very, very meticulous detail on this sort of subject matter. And it spends most of its time on Ukrainian nationalism, the ideology of Ukrainian nationalism, and of course, the atrocities that Ukrainian nationalists committed in the 1940s, especially in the areas of Volhynia and Galicia. And the reason why I'm thinking about this is because it's relevant to what is occurring right now. We have, all of a sudden, an entire media apparatus that is praising Ukrainian nationalism. Now, before Russia invaded Ukraine, it was very easy to find media outlets publishing articles on the subject of Ukrainian nationalism, not as something that's good, but as something that is troubling. You can find stuff on Time magazine. All sorts of major media publications talking about the dangers of Ukrainian nationalism, talking about the intricate networks of the Azov Battalion in Ukraine, talking about war crimes committed by the Azov Battalion. Once Russia invaded Ukraine, we began to see more and more articles talking about how Azov really isn't that bad. Yeah, some of them are Nazis, but most people in Azov are just good nationalists. They're just like patriots, kind of like, the Proud Boys, things like that. All of a sudden, nationalists became good. Before, remember how much we heard about the far right in England, the far right in Italy, the far right in Poland, the far right in Germany, the far right in whatever freaking country, just name it, they were talking about it, right? Especially, I almost forgot. The American far right, the rise of the far right in America. Now they are talking about the far right in Ukraine as if they're heroes. Which really goes to show you that bashing the far right for many, many people in the media is just a way to. It basically depends on who they're against, right? If they're against Trump, then they're against the far right. But if they're pro-Ukraine, then far right in Ukraine is not that bad. They're just good people. They're fighting for their country. All of a sudden, they got the commander of ISIS on CNN. It's crazy to me, guys. It's absolutely crazy to me. And a lot of these nationalists in Ukraine are Catholics. A lot of them are from some kind of Orthodox background, but also a lot of them are Catholics. And a lot of these far-right Ukrainians are members of a church called the Uniate Catholic Church. Uniate Catholic Church is basically... It's a Catholic church that's under Rome, but it has the trappings of a Greek Orthodox church. That's how I can describe it. Other than that, I don't really know much about the history of the Uniate Church, but I do know that a lot of Uniates were Nazis during the Second World War, and they participated in some pretty horrific atrocities, some pretty horrific stuff. And this book talks about it. Tadeusz Petrovsky does a very good job in covering all sides covering all sides of the history. He gets into the different collaborators, who they were. So he talks about the formation of the SS Galician. The SS Galician was one of the main Ukrainian SS units. These were major collaborators with the Nazis. And these are people that today's Ukrainian nationalists would call heroes. So it says here, here's an excerpt from a letter that was written by a Polish man by the name of Władysław Bakowski. And he writes in a letter to the Polish Sejm. I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but it's basically the Polish parliament. And he says, I come from Huta Pianiaka. Now, Huta Pianiaka was a village where a horrific atrocity took place. And he says here, on February 28th, 1944, the population of Huta Pianiaka was murdered and the village burned. On that day, among others, my parents were killed. On that day, over 1,000 residents of the village were murdered in an inhumane manner. And when he says inhumane, there's so much to dig out just from that term, inhumane. When you read about what happened in Poland in 1942, the ways that they killed people was pretty unimaginable, pretty unfathomable. So he says, not all could be identified because their bodies were so messed up when they found them. Most of them were burned alive. That atrocity was committed by the soldiers and officers of the SS Galician and the Ukrainian nationalists of the OUN-UPA. OUN-UPA being the followers of Bandera, the guy that is praised as almost like a god in Western Ukraine. So I want to read to you guys another part here. And this is a letter from August 12th, 1943. And it's written by a guy named Kurt Daluge, the head of the Ordnungspolizei, SS Oberstruppenführer. And he wrote to SS Gruppenführer Otto Winkelmann. And he says here, there is now a new order, which includes the following. A new front division is to be created by and for the Waffen SS, which will be made up of Greek Catholic Ukrainians from Galicia, and which will probably be called the Galician Division, since these Ukrainians are from Galicia. The other Ukrainians in the general government, those from the Lublin area, are Greek Orthodox. These are to be used in the formation of police regiments with only a small German command. So you had Ukrainian Catholics slaughtering Polish people who were also Catholics. Catholics killing Catholics. You also had Orthodox Christians, and I'm just saying Christians for the sake of conveying a message easily, but you had people who were members of the Orthodox Church. I don't think these people were Christians, but members of the Orthodox Church who were Nazis, and they butchered Catholics as well. Christians killing Christians. These people obviously weren't Christians. They were people who worshiped their race. They were people who fought for some kind of nationalistic cause, didn't mind committing atrocities. But you had Catholics killing Catholics in the case of Ukrainian Catholics murdering Polish Catholics. So when this girl called up this church asking, hey, I want to join your church, this guy said, are you Ukrainian? First thing that he says, are you Ukrainian? No, goodbye. Click. It's pretty horrendous, guys. And it's amazing that in Ukraine, there are so many people who praise the Ukrainian collaborators, Ukrainians who collaborated with the Nazis, like Andrei Melnik, Bandera, etc. And people are acting as if Ukraine is just the saint of a country. Now, I know that Russia has done bad things, but let's not sit here and pretend like Ukraine is this wonderful country. A lot of people in Ukraine are Nazis. Russia is focusing most of its fighting in Donbass, which is where all the fighting was taking place before Russia invaded Ukraine. And a lot of the people who were fighting the pro-Russian faction in Donbass were and are Nazis. These are people who are part of Azov, people who were a part of the Tornado Battalion. And the Tornado Battalion were all just a bunch of Nazis who were literally kidnapping civilians in Donbass and raping them, men and women, and torturing them in horrific ways. They were keeping people in a basement. I think it was underneath some elementary school, and they were using the basement as a torture chamber. This was like some Saw type stuff here, guys. It's pretty horrendous. Sodomizing men as a way of torturing them. And this is not just some Russian propaganda, okay? These guys, these members of this battalion were arrested, and they were tried and found guilty of doing these things by the Ukrainian government. And they were sentenced for, some of them were sentenced to 8 years, some 10 years. They had a variety of different sentencings. But they were released. These criminals, these murderers, were released in the year 2021, the year before the Russian invasion. Why? Because a lot of Ukrainians thought these people were heroes. Probably. Maybe there was some political pressure. I'm not sure why. But I know that a lot of Ukrainians think that these guys were and are heroes. So Ukraine isn't this innocent country. There was plenty of Nazism there. There still is. There's plenty of racism. And the people who were living in Donbass, the people who were pro-Russia, they weren't most definitely being abused by the government. There was definitely indiscriminate strikes on civilian infrastructure by the Ukrainian government. So I don't really blame the Russians for wanting to help their people there. I'm not praising atrocities that the Russians may have committed, but I'm simply saying it's understandable that Russians would want to help their people. The reality is that Ukraine does have a Nazi problem. This is a fact. So yes, you want to help the people of Ukraine. You want to help civilians who are in trouble. God bless you. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm referring to is the vicious nationalism that exists in Ukraine. And the reason why I bring these things up is because while you may want to wave the Ukrainian flag and you want to talk about, oh, the poor people of Ukraine, remember that in the future, you may see some pretty horrific things being done by Ukrainian nationalists, kind of like what happened in Volhynia in the 1940s. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.
Страху